Chapter 2. Let us leave Danglars, possessed by the demon of hatred and trying to breathe some evil insinuation against his comrade, into the ship owner's ear and follow Dantes, who, after having walked the entire length of the Canebière, turned into the Rue de Noir, entered a small house on the left side of the Allée des Milhan, ran up 4 flights of dark stairs, and stopped before a half-open door, which revealed the interior of a little room. It was the room in which his father lived. "Father, my dear father!" The old man uttered a cry and turned around, then fell into his son's arms, trembling and pale. Okay, so Dantes was like, "Father, I'm home!" And then the dad was like, "Ugh!" It was such a dramatic entrance. Okay, but he kind of almost faints into his son's arms. "What's the matter, father?" exclaimed the young man anxiously. "Are you ill?" No, Edmond, my son, my child, no. But I wasn't expecting you, and the joy of suddenly seeing you like this. They say joy never harms anyone, so I came straight here as soon as I landed. I've come back safely, and we're going to be happy together." "That's wonderful, my boy," said the old man. "But how are we going to be happy? Do you mean you're not going to leave me anymore? Tell me about your good fortune." "May God forgive me for rejoicing in a good fortune brought about by another man's death. But it's happened, and I don't have the strength to regret it. Captain Leclerc is dead, and it looks as though I'm going to take his place. Can you imagine that, father? A captain at the age of 20, with a salary of 100 louis, plus a share in the profits. Isn't that really more than a poor sailor like me could ever hope for?" "Yes, my son, you're very lucky." So Dantes is so young, no, he's only 20. "And with the first money I earn, I want to buy you a little house with a garden." "What's the matter, father? You don't look well." "It's nothing, it will pass," said the old man. But his strength failed and he fell backward. Wow, okay, so the dad of Dantes is like, like he's like almost about to faint every second, okay? And Dantes is like, "What's wrong? Like, why are you so, what, are you not feeling well? Are you sick?" "It's nothing, it will pass," said the old man, but his strength failed and he fell backward. "You need a glass of wine," said Edmond. "That will make you feel better. Where do you keep your wine?" "I don't need any," said the old man, trying to hold back his son. "Yes, you do," said Edmond. "Just tell me where it is." He opened 2 or 3 cupboards. "Don't bother looking, there's no more wine." "No more wine?" exclaimed Edmond, turning pale and looking alternately at his father's hollow cheeks and the empty cupboards. "Have you been short of money, father?" "I don't need anything now that you're here." But I gave you 200 francs when I left 3 months ago," stammered Edmond. "Yes, that's true, Edmond, but you forgot a little debt you owed to your neighbor Caderousse. He reminded me of it and told me that if I didn't pay it for you, he'd go to see Monsieur Morel about it. I was afraid that might do you harm, so I paid him." "But I owed Caderousse 140 francs. Did you give it to him out of the 200 francs I left you?" The old man nodded. "And you lived for 3 months on 60 francs?" exclaimed Edmond. "May God forgive me. It doesn't matter now that you're here." Okay, so before Edmond left, because he's a sailor, okay, he left on the Pharaon, the ship, he left his father 200 francs, okay, for 3 months. And 200 francs is a lot of money for 3 months. And so he was confident that his father would have enough to eat, would be able to buy wine. And wine, guys, people usually drink wine medicinally. They drink it for medicine, no? Because it warms you up, it keeps you warm, it's good for the heart. A little bit of wine is very good for you. And so Dantes was very confident that his father was okay. But Dantes owed money to a neighbor, and the neighbor went to the dad and said, "You pay me the money Dantes owes me, or I will talk to his boss, Monsieur Morel." And so the father didn't want Dantes to get in trouble, so he paid the money. He paid the debt, no, to this neighbor Caderousse. Okay, it was 140 francs. So the dad only had 60 francs for 3 months, and that's very little. And so the dad wasn't eating, he didn't have any of his wine or of his medicine, and that's why he's sickly now, he's weak now. May God forgive me. It doesn't matter now that you're here. Yes, I'm here now with a good future before me and a little money already. Here, Father, take this and send for some things right away. He emptied the contents of his pockets onto the table, a dozen pieces of gold, 5 or 6 5-franc coins, and some small change. The old man's face brightened. Whose is that? He asked. It's mine, yours, ours. Take it and buy provisions, and don't worry, tomorrow there will be more. Also, I have some contraband coffee and some excellent tobacco for you on the ship. You'll have it tomorrow. Listen, I hear someone coming. It's probably Kadaru coming to welcome you back from your trip. Kadaru is the neighbor who Edmond Dantes borrowed money from, and he got that money from the dad, making the dad very poor for those 3 months. More lips that say one thing while the heart thinks another, muttered Edmond. Just the same though, he's a neighbor who once did us a favor, so he's welcome here. A moment later, Kadaru entered. He was a man of about 25 with black hair and beard. He was holding a piece of cloth which, being a tailor, he intended to turn into the lining of a coat. So you're back, Edmond, he said in a heavy Marseille accent, and with a broad grin which revealed his white teeth. Yes, I'm back, and ready to be of service to you in any way I can, replied Edmond, scarcely concealing his coldness beneath these polite words. So Dantes is mad good. Edmond Dantes is mad at Kadaru, okay? Because Kadaru did lend them money, alright? However, Dantes is mad that he asked his dad for it. And he threatened pagid his dad. You pay me back or I'll tell Edmond's boss. Okay, so he kind of bullied the dad of Dantes, okay? And so Edmond was like, I won't deny he did us a favor before, but he tends to be fake good. Kadaru, he says one thing, but his heart says another. And, he's kind of the reason why his dad is not feeling well. And so he hates Kadaru, or he's mad at Kadaru right now. Thank you, but fortunately I don't need anything. In fact, other people sometimes need me, Edmond started. Oh, I'm not talking about you, continued Kadaru. I lent you some money, and you paid it back, so now we're quits. We're never quits with those who have done us a favor, said Edmond. Even when we no longer owe them money, we still owe them gratitude. Why talk about that? What's past is past. Let's talk about your return, my boy. I ran across our friend Danglars down at the harbor, and he told me about it. He also told me you have a high place in Monsieur Morel's favor now. But you shouldn't have refused his invitation to dinner. If a man wants to become a captain, it's always a good idea to flatter his ship owner a little. I hope to become a captain without that. So much the better. All your old friends will be glad to see you succeed, and I know someone else who won't be at all sorry to hear about it. Do you mean Mercedes? Asked the old man. Yes, father, said Edmond. And now that I've seen you, now that I know you're well and have everything you need, with your permission, I'll go see Mercedes. He embraced his father, nodded to Kadaru, and went out. Kadaru remained for a moment, then took his leave of Edmond's father, went downstairs, and met Danglars, who was waiting for him. Well, said Danglars, did he talk to you about his hope of becoming captain? He talked as though it had already happened, and it's already made him arrogant. He offered his services to me as though he were a great man. Is he still in love with Mercedes? Head over heels. Okay, so right away, Kadaru and Danglars, they're so good, like mean girls good. Like, they're like, gossiping about Dantes, talking smack about Edmond Dantes, and they're like, oh my, he's so hambogiro na because he's captain. He even offered to help me out if I needed anything. Like, his head is so big. Like, he's so proud already. And they're just talking smack. Alright? Danglars and Kadaru, no? So, Dantes good. Even though he seems to be very nice, a lot of people don't like him. They dislike him. And then they're talking about Mercedes now. Is he still in love with Mercedes? Head over heels. He's on his way to see her now, but unless I'm mistaken, he's in for an unpleasant surprise. What do you mean? I don't know much for sure, but I do know that every time Mercedes comes into town, she's accompanied by a husky young Catalan with an ardent expression on his face. You say Dantes is on his way to see her now? Asked Danglars. Yes, he left just before I did. Then let's go in the same direction. We'll stop at La Reserve and wait for the news over a bottle of wine. Who's going to tell us any news? We'll be beside the road, and we can tell what's happened from the expression on Dantes's face. Let's go then, said Caderousse, but you'll pay for the wine, won't you? Certainly, replied Danglars. The two friends walked rapidly away. They're such losers. They're like, oh, Mercedes, but yeah, she's always hanging out with another guy. So Dantes, he's probably going to be heartbroken that while he was away, she kept going out with another guy. And they're like, let's go to a restaurant across the street and watch it happen. Like, I want to see what his expression will be like when he sees Mercedes with another guy, you know? So they're so loser. Like, that's what they're gonna do. Like, Danglars, you were just on a 3-month trip. You don't have anyone to visit. What you're gonna do is you're just gonna wait around to watch Dantes get hurt. Caderousse and Danglars they're petty. They're mean girls good. We're like, they just talk smack about someone who didn't do anything against them, and they like seeing other people get hurt. It's very, very stupid. They're honestly like high school mean girls, and it's sad and it's pathetic. Okay, we'll continue chapter 3. Chapter 3. 100 paces or so from the spot where Danglars and Caderousse sat sipping their wine was the village of the Catalans. One day, a mysterious group of people set out from Spain and settled on the narrow strip of land which they still inhabit today. Their leader, who could speak a little Provençal, asked the commune of Marseille to give them the barren promontory on which they had run their boats ashore. The request was granted, and 3 months later, those sea-going gypsies had built a small village. Today, 3 or 4 centuries later, they still remain faithful to their little promontory and do not mix with the population of Marseille. They marry only among themselves and preserve the customs and language of their original homeland. In one of the houses on the only street of this little village, a beautiful young girl with jet black hair and eyes as soft as those of a gazelle was standing leaning against the wall. Before her sat a young man of about 20, tilting his chair nervously and looking at her with a mixture of uneasiness and anger. His eyes were questioning her, but her firm, steadfast gaze dominated him. Listen, Mercedes, said the young man. It's almost Easter again, a good time for a wedding. Give me an answer. So Mercedes, this is our first view of Mercedes. You know, she's in this small town of Catalans. Okay, they're kind of like a mixed race, you know. They're not originally from France, but they moved to France, and they're kind of a minority group in France, no. But she's very beautiful. Okay, very dark hair, very beautiful eyes, good. Okay, and there's another young man next to her, and he's like, please, Mercedes, answer me, okay? And it's clear that the young man wants to marry her because he mentions it's it being a good time for a wedding. Give me an answer. I've already answered you 100 times, Fernand. You must be your own enemy to keep on asking me. I've never encouraged your hopes. I've always said to you, I love you like a brother, but never ask anything more of me because my heart belongs to someone else. Haven't I always told you that, Fernand? So Fernand is a new character and he wants Mercedes, okay? And Mercedes is like, no, lagi, my heart belongs to someone else. Yes, you've always been cruelly frank with me. Besides, why should you want to marry me, a poor orphan girl whose only fortune is a cabin that's falling into ruin? I don't care how poor you are, Mercedes. I'd rather have you than the daughter of the proudest ship owner or the richest banker in Marseille. All a man needs is an honorable wife and a good housekeeper. Where could I find anyone better than you in both respects? Fernand, replied Mercedes, shaking her head, a woman becomes a bad housekeeper and can't even guarantee to remain an honorable wife if she loves someone other than her husband. Be satisfied with my friendship, It's all I can promise you, and I never promised anything I'm not sure of being able to give. I love that line. I love Mercedes. This is such a way to reject a guy. She says, be satisfied with my friendship. So girls, if someone tries good to be uyab with you, and you're like, no, no, okay? And they keep asking and they keep asking, you say, be satisfied with my friendship. It's all I can promise you, and I never promise anything I'm not sure of being able to give. Fernand stood up, paced back and forth for a few moments, then stopped in front of her, clenching his fists and scowling. Tell me once more, Mercedes, he said. Is this your final answer? I love Edmond Dantes, replied the girl coldly, and no other man will ever be my husband. And will you always love him? As long as I live. Fernand bowed his head in despair and heaved a sigh which sounded like a groan. Then, suddenly looking up, he hissed between his teeth, what if he dies? If he dies, so will I, Char. Because Fernand is like, what if he dies? And then Mercedes was like, if Dantes dies, then I will die too. What if he forgets you? Mercedes, shouted a joyful voice outside the house. Ah, cried the girl, blushing with happiness and love. You see, he hasn't forgotten me. There he is now. She ran to the door, opened it, and called out, Here I am, Edmond. Fernand recoiled as though he had seen a snake, and sank down again into his chair. Edmond and Mercedes fell into each other's arms. The fierce Marseille sun shining in through the door covered them with a flood of light. At first they saw nothing around them. Their overwhelming happiness isolated them from the rest of the world. Then Edmond suddenly became aware of a somber face glaring at him out of the shadows. Fernand had unconsciously put his hand to the handle of the knife in his belt. Fernand is so over. It's like Mercedes and Dantes were reunited, and then Fernand was just there watching it. He was like holding his knife. Chill, dude. Excuse me, said Dantes. I didn't realize there were three of us. Turning to Mercedes, he asked, Who is this gentleman? He'll be your friend, Edmond, because he's my friend. He's my cousin Fernand, the man I love most in the world after you. Don't you recognize him? Ah, yes, said Edmond, keeping Mercedes's hand clasped in his. He held out his other hand to Fernand, but Fernand remained as motionless and silent as a statue. Edmond looked inquiringly at Mercedes, who was trembling and upset, then at Fernand, who scowled threateningly. He saw everything at a glance. His face darkened with anger. I didn't expect to find an enemy in your house when I hurried here to see you, he said. An enemy, cried Mercedes with an indignant look at her cousin. You have no enemy here. Fernand is like a brother to me. He's going to shake hands with you in friendship. She looked imperiously at Fernand, who, as though hypnotized, slowly held out his hand to Edmond. Like a furious yet powerless wave, his hatred had broken against the command which the girl exercised over him. But as soon as he touched Edmond's hand, he knew he had done everything that was within his power. He turned abruptly and rushed out of the house. Oh, he cried, running like a madman and clutching his head between his hands. How can I get rid of him? What can I do? What can I do? Fernand, chill, okay? It's like he shook hands with Dantes and then he ran out and he was like, oh. This book, it is dramatic, you guys. It's dramatic. It kind of feels a little bit like TV drama, okay? Or like a soap opera. The emotions are very intense. There's a lot of plotting. There's a lot of scheming. And that can be a lot of fun to read about, okay? That can really be a lot of fun. We're like, oh, those people are so annoying, and oh, these people are so extra. That's a lot of fun sometimes to read, okay? What can I do? What can I do? Where are you going in such a hurry, Fernand? Called out a voice. He stopped short, looked around, and saw Danglars sitting at the table with Caderousse in the arbor of a tavern. Well, said Caderousse, why don't you come on over? Are you in such a hurry that you don't have time to talk to your friends? especially when they have a full bottle of wine in front of them, added Danglars. Fernand looked at the two men with a dazed expression on his face and said nothing. He seems dejected, remarked Danglars, nudging Caderousse with his knee. Could we be wrong? Could it be that Dantes has won out over him after all? Maybe so, replied Caderousse. We'll see. Turning to Fernand, he said, Well, come on, make up your mind. Fernand wiped away the sweat streaming down his forehead and walked slowly into the arbor. Hello, he said. You called me, didn't you? He sat down, slumped forward on the table, and let out a groan that was almost a sob. You know what, Fernand, said Caderousse. You look like a rejected lover. He accompanied this little jest with a coarse laugh. What are you talking about, said Danglars. A handsome young man like Fernand is never unlucky in love. You must be joking, Caderousse. No, I'm not. Just listen to the way he's sighing. Come on, Fernand, look up and talk to us. It's impolite not to answer your friends when they ask about your health. My health is fine, said Fernand, clenching his fists, but still not raising his head. Ah, you see, Danglars, said Caderousse, winking at his friend. This is how things are. Fernand here, who's a brave Catalan and one of the best fishermen in Marseille, is in love with a pretty girl named Mercedes. But unfortunately, she's in love with the first mate of the Pharaon. Now, since the Pharaon put into port today, well, you understand. No, I don't understand, said Danglars. Poor Fernand has been dismissed, continued Caderousse. And what if I have, said Fernand, raising his head and looking at Caderousse like a man searching for someone on whom to vent his anger. Mercedes is free to love anyone she wants to, isn't she? Ah, if you take it like that, said Caderousse, that's another story. I thought you were a Catalan. I've always heard that a Catalan was not a man to let himself be pushed aside by a rival. And I've always heard that Fernand Mondego especially was terrible in his vengeance. Okay, so right now, guys, we have good 3 enemies of Edmond Dantes. We have Danglars, okay, the treasurer from the ship who doesn't like Danglars, who doesn't like Dantes rather, because Danglars seems to be kind of jealous of him or doesn't like that he's gonna be the next captain. We have Caderousse, the tailor, okay, the neighbor, who, I don't know, I think he has a superiority complex. Like, he doesn't like that Dantes is poor and is gonna get a higher position. It's gonna be a captain, which is higher than a tailor, And I think Caderousse is kind of a snob, where he doesn't want, like, what, he offered help to me? Okay, and then we have Fernand Mondego, who is in love with the fiancée of Dantes. So we have 3 enemies here, and they're just gathered around talking about Dantes and how much they all hate him. Poor fellow, exclaimed Danglars, pretending to pity the young man from the bottom of his heart. He didn't expect Dantes to come back like this without warning. He thought he might be dead or unfaithful. A thing like that is always more painful when it happens suddenly. Well, in any case, said Caderousse, who kept drinking as he spoke, and on whom the wine was beginning to have an effect, Fernand isn't the only one to be annoyed by Dantes. Happy return. Fernand isn't the only one to be annoyed by Dantes' happy return, is he, Danglars? No, that's true, and I might almost say that it'll bring him bad luck. It doesn't matter, though, in the meantime, at least, he'll marry the beautiful Mercedes. Danglars looked scrutinizingly at Fernand, on whom Caderousse's words fell like drops of molten lead. When will the wedding be? He asked. It hasn't taken place yet, muttered Fernand. No, but it will, said Caderousse, just as surely as Dantes will be made captain of the Pharaon. Isn't that right, Danglars? Danglars started at this unexpected thrust, and turned to look at Caderousse in order to see if it had been premeditated. But he saw nothing but envy in his drunken face. They're drunk, but they're like drunk on wine, and they're just like talking about how much they hate Dantes. It's very dark, no? But he saw nothing but envy in his drunken face. All right, then, he said, filling up the glasses. Let's drink. To Captain Edmond Dantes, husband of the beautiful Mercedes. Caderousse raised his glass with a heavy hand and emptied it at one gulp. Fernand took his and dashed it to the ground. Well, well, exclaimed Caderousse, what do I see there at the top of the hill? Take a look, Fernand. You can see better than I can. I think my eyes are starting to blur. You know how treacherous wine is. It seems to me I see two lovers walking along, hand in hand. God forgive me. They don't know we can see them, and they're kissing. None of the anguish visible in Fernand's face escaped Danglars. Do you know them, Fernand? He asked. Yes, replied Fernand dully. It's Dantes and Mercedes. Ah, cried Caderousse, you see, I didn't even recognize them. Hey, Dantes, hey, young lady, come over here a minute, and tell us when the wedding's going to be. Fernand's so stubborn he won't tell us. Be quiet, said Danglars, pretending to restrain Caderousse, who, with the tenacity of the drunk, was leaning outside the arbor, tried to stand up and leave the lovebirds to their love-making. Look at Fernand, he's acting sensibly. Danglars looked at the two men and thought, these fools are useless to me. One of them's a drunkard and the other's a coward. I'm afraid Dantes' good luck is going to hold out. He'll marry the girl, become captain of the Pharaon, and have the laugh on all of us. Unless, a smile passed over his lips, unless I take a hand in things. Hey there, Caderousse continued to shout, half erect and leaning on the table. Edmond, don't you see your friends, or are you too proud to talk to them? Not at all, Caderousse, replied Dantes. I'm not proud, but I'm happy, and I think happiness makes a man even blinder than pride. That's a very good excuse, said Caderousse. Hello there, Madame Dantes. That's not my name yet, replied Mercedes gravely, and they say it brings bad luck to a girl to call a girl by the name of her fiancé before she's married, so please call me Mercedes. I suppose the wedding will take place very soon, won't it, Monsieur Dantes? Said Danglars, bowing to the young couple. As soon as possible, Monsieur Danglars. Today all the preliminaries will be arranged by my father's house, and tomorrow, or day after tomorrow at the latest, we'll have the betrothal feast here at the tavern. All our friends will be there, which means you're invited, Monsieur Danglars, and you too, Caderousse. And what about Fernand? Asked Caderousse with a dull laugh. Is he invited too? My wife's friend is my friend, answered Dantes, and we deeply regret it if he were absent from such an occasion. Fernand opened his mouth to reply, but his voice died in his throat, and he was unable to utter a single word. The preliminaries today and the betrothal feast tomorrow or the next day, exclaimed Danglars. You're certainly in a hurry, Captain. Monsieur Danglars, said Dantes, smiling, let me tell you the same thing Mercedes told Caderousse just now. Don't give me a title that doesn't belong to me yet. It might bring me bad luck. Excuse me, replied Danglars. I only meant to say that you seem to be in quite a hurry. Yet there's plenty of time. It will be a good 3 months before the Pharaon puts to sea again. A man is always in a hurry to be happy, but in this case it's not only because of selfishness. I must go to Paris. Oh, really? Do you have business there? Not on my own account. Our poor Captain Leclerc asked me to do something for him there. As you can understand, it's a sacred duty, but don't worry, I'll come straight back. Yes, I understand, said Danglars. Then he thought to himself, he's probably going to Paris to deliver the letter the Marshal gave him. That letter gives me an idea, an excellent idea. Okay, so Dantes, he's so trusting, and he gives information, no, even to people he knows doesn't like him. He knows by good these men don't like him, but he just kind of said, like, I want to get married as soon as possible because I have to go to Paris. I have to deliver something. I have to do something for the captain. No, he asked me to do something for him. He's so trusting. He's so innocent. He can't believe that even enemies would want to cause him harm, no? But upon hearing this, Danglars is like, oh, he's probably going to go to Paris to deliver that letter that the captain gave him. And so I know I can do something. I know I can do something about this, no? I know we can do something. against Dantes with this information. So Dantes is so trusting and he just gives information out. He doesn't believe that people would scheme against him. But Danglars, Cadaru, and Fernand Mondego, they're very bitter against him. Yes, I understand. That letter gives me an idea, an excellent idea. Ah, Dantes, my friend, you're not yet entered in the Pharaon's Lawless number 1. Then as Dantes began to walk away, he called out, Bon voyage. Thank you, replied Dantes, turning around and giving him a friendly nod. The two lovers went on their way as blissful as two souls rising up to heaven. So Dantes is so like, thank you. They're like, congratulations. He's like, thank you. But then Danglars is planning something. So that's chapters 2 and 3. Click on the next video for the next chapter.